Credit cards can be an amazing financial tool if used correctly and responsibly, but for a lot of people out there, it's really easy to make some common mistakes that can cost you thousands of dollars while also hurting your credit score. But you might not even fully understand what you did wrong, so in this video, I want to go over 7 credit card mistakes that I see people make the most and how you can avoid them. If you're new to my channel, then I just want to quickly ask that you consider subscribing down below for future credit card and personal finance content. But let's get right into the video here. So the first mistake that I see people make the most, and this is one that's really easy to avoid, but I still see people making it time and time again, and that's overspending or maxing out your credit card. Now, when you get a credit card, you're going to get a credit limit, which is the maximum that the credit card issuer will allow you to spend on that card before you have to pay off that balance. What happens is that the higher your balance is on a credit card, the higher your credit utilization rate will be, which is the ratio between your credit card balance and your credit limit. Your credit utilization rate will be calculated on each credit card individually, as well as across all of your credit cards combined by simply taking the total balances across all your credit cards divided by the total credit limit of all your cards. So if you have 2 credit cards that both have a credit limit of $5,000 and you have a $2,000 balance on one card and no balance on the other card, then your total credit utilization rate would be 20%. And the reason why this is so important to know is that your credit utilization rate has a high impact on your credit score, accounting for as much as 30% of the score. So if you're overspending or you're maxing out your credit cards, or if your total credit limits are just low relative to your total balances, then you're going to likely have a high credit utilization rate, which is going to hurt your overall credit score. And a low credit score is going to impact your ability to lock in a good rate on a mortgage or a car loan, or it could even cause you to miss out on renting an apartment that you want to rent because the landlord runs a credit check and they see you have a low score and they think that you're not as responsible with money. Now, there's a few tips that I have here to help you out. So the first one is to keep your credit utilization rate below 30% as a general rule, because this is considered good. Having your credit utilization rate at least below 30% or even lower if possible is better, because it shows that you're responsible with the credit that you've been given. Second, if you're planning on making a purchase on your credit card that will push your credit utilization rate above 30%, then make sure that you have enough money set aside in a bank account before you make that purchase so that you can just pay off that credit card immediately, or at least have enough set aside to pay off some of that amount that will push your credit utilization rate below 30% before that gets reported to the credit bureaus. And third, don't close a credit card if you don't have to, which is a good transition to mistake number 2, closing credit cards. You know, some people think, oh, I've got this credit card open and I don't really use it that much anymore. What's the point in keeping it open? Or maybe they think, oh, I've got all these credit cards, I'm not using them, I should just close them because they're hurting my credit score. But that's all wrong. The main reason why it's a mistake to close a credit card goes hand in hand with credit utilization, because by closing a credit card, you're closing off that credit limit that's available to you on the card. And just think about it. By removing a credit limit, you're decreasing the denominator in the credit utilization equation that I talked about before, which is just going to increase your credit utilization rate with all else held equal. So back to that previous example, if you closed that one credit card with no balance and a $5,000 credit limit and still kept open the other card with a $2,000 balance and a $5,000 credit limit, your credit utilization ratio would jump from 20% before to 40%, which is double. And closing a card also negatively affects your credit history length as well as the average age of your credit. So for example, this Wells Fargo cashback card only gets me 1% back on everything, which is not that great, but I still keep it open because it was actually my first credit card and it's 5 years old now. For those reasons, that Wells Fargo card is valuable to me because it's my oldest credit card, and it also helps to bring up the average age of my credit, which are factors that can impact up to 15% of your credit score. Now, closing a credit card is going to immediately affect your credit utilization rate because it's going to remove the credit limit from that card, but it's not going to immediately affect the average age of your credit because that credit card is going to still remain on your credit report for up to 10 years, but in the long term, it will eventually drop off your report and affect you then. So some tips here to help you with closing credit cards. First, if it's a no annual fee card, do not close it because it's not costing you anything to keep it open. That's why it's always a good idea to start your credit history with no annual fee cards, because it's free to keep them open, and it's going to help with factors such as your credit utilization rate as well as the average age of your credit. Second, if you have a credit card that has an annual fee, or you're considering getting a credit card with an annual fee, then do a little bit of research and see if that credit card has an option to downgrade to a no annual fee card in case you decide that you don't feel like paying that annual fee in the future. An example of this is the Chase Sapphire family of cards. As of the filming of this video, you can downgrade the Chase Sapphire Reserve or the Chase Sapphire Preferred, both of which have an annual fee, to a no annual fee card such as the Chase Freedom Unlimited or the Chase Freedom Flex. And even though you're changing cards, it's still technically the same account, which is going to allow you to keep that credit line and that credit history on your report. Just be sure to always go and check to see what the current information is regarding downgrading a credit card, because these rules are always changing. But if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below, and I'd be happy to help out. Now, credit card mistake number 3 is very important, and not a lot of people know this, but closing a card on your own is not the only way that a card can be closed and then negatively affect your credit score like I just talked about. Your credit card can actually be closed by the issuer for inactivity if you haven't used that credit card in many months. Now, there's no set rule for how many months or how many years it takes before a credit card issuer will close your account for inactivity, but you can go ahead and Google this to see what other people have experienced. But in general, it could take as few as 3 to 6 months, but more likely 12 months or more of not using a credit card before they cancel it for you. And sometimes, depending on the credit card company, they can warn you of inactivity or of potential upcoming closure, but I wouldn't count on it, so here's what I would do. Ideally, you remember with each credit card how long it's been since you've used it, and if you haven't used it in a while, so on your next trip to the grocery store or the drugstore or something, you just take it out of your sock drawer and bring it with you. But it can be easy to forget this way, so I recommend 2 things. First, try to track your credit cards in some way by either using a spreadsheet or an app. And second, if you're trying to figure out a way to use certain credit cards that you typically use less frequently, I recommend that you take a look at Amazon's Reload Your Balance feature. You can save dozens of credit cards within your Amazon account, and then what I recommend is you just set a reminder for yourself, and every 6 months or so, go in and use each one of those credit cards to reload a few dollars into your Amazon balance. These purchases will keep your credit card accounts active, but they also have a cash value to them. Since Amazon has basically everything for a pretty good price, you can just go ahead and turn around and spend that balance on whatever you want. Now, I have heard that some credit card companies will just waive certain small purchases, so I wouldn't go ahead and just reload 50 cents or $1, but maybe go ahead and reload $4 or $5 on each of those cards every 6 months or so, and you should be good. Now, on to mistake number 4, which is probably the biggest mistake that you can make with a credit card, and that's carrying a balance month to month. Now, there are sort of 2 reasons why people might carry a balance or might think to carry a balance. One is that they might just not have the money on hand at the moment to pay off the credit card balance in full, so they end up carrying it over to the next month, and I'll talk more about this in just a minute. And the second reason is that they think that carrying a balance month to month will help with their credit score by showing that they're responsible with carrying a balance or something like that. But that's just simply not true. There are no real benefits to your credit score by carrying a balance month to month. What you're actually doing is you're now carrying a debt that will cost you a lot of extra money, because credit cards have some of the highest interest rates of any debt at 15 to 25%, and this is just totally unnecessary to do. Instead, you should be paying off your balance in full every month to avoid getting charged interest while still getting cash back and rewards, and also building your credit score. And here are 2 tips that I have to help you with this. First, you should think of your credit card like a debit card. With a debit card, you have to already have the money in your checking account, because as soon as you swipe that debit card, that money is going to be removed from the account almost instantly. But with a credit card, you're using the credit that's provided to you by a third-party credit company to make a purchase, and then you're reimbursing the credit card company at a later date because they give you some time to do that. So just change your mindset here and pretend that you're using a debit card when you're actually using a credit card. Make sure that you already have the money set aside in a bank account before you swipe that credit card, and then go ahead and pay off the balance in full. That way, you won't be tempted to make a purchase for something that you can't actually afford, which could then potentially cause you to carry a balance month to month. You'll get charged interest, which effectively means that you're paying more for that item that you purchased than you originally intended to. Which leads me to my 5th mistake that I see people make the most with their credit cards, and it's also a mistake that I see people make with their overall personal finance habits, and that's not having an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund is a very boring thing to talk about and think about, but it's one of the first things that I created when I first started earning an income. What most experts recommend is that you save 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, so that in the event of an emergency, such as you being laid off from your job, you have enough money set aside to cover your overall living expenses, and you don't have to resort to taking on debt to finance your life. Having an emergency fund is also useful for covering random and unexpected expenses like your car breaking down or taking your dog to the vet or something like that. The problem that many people face is they don't have an emergency fund to fall back on in case one of these unexpected events actually happens. Instead, they turn to credit card debt because it's easy and they've been given this high credit limit that will help them to cover their immediate expenses. And look, I get it. For many people that are living paycheck to paycheck, sometimes turning to credit cards to cover an emergency feels like your only option. But doing so is only going to make it more likely for you to carry a credit card balance month to month, accumulate interest charges that are going to really stack up, and it's just going to dig you deeper and deeper into debt. So before you even start to think about using credit cards, make sure that you find a way to either save a little extra money each month or make a little extra money each month, and then set that money aside in a separate account so you can cover your living expenses in the event of an emergency. Now, the sixth credit card mistake that I see people make the most, and it goes back to paying off your credit card, and that is missing a minimum payment. It can be easy to forget to make a minimum payment if you're not tracking your credit cards. And again, for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they might not have enough money already set aside to even make that minimum payment. Now, missing a minimum payment not only costs you a lot of money in the form of late fees on top of the accruing interest, but it also really hurts your credit score. That's because payment history has the greatest impact out of all the factors to your credit score, accounting for 35% of your score. Missing one minimum payment will start to hurt your credit score, but missing multiple payments is worse because these missed payments will stay on your report for years. Now, some tips to help you avoid missing your minimum payments and what to do if you do forget to make one. First, make note of the due dates for each of your credit cards, and if you need to, work with your credit card issuer to change these due dates so that they maybe align better with your actual days that you get paid. Next, set up reminders that will remind you when your bill is due, and consider setting up automatic payments to at least make the minimum payment so that you never accidentally miss one. Just make sure that if you do set up automatic payments that you have enough money already set aside in your bank account so you avoid overdrafting. And third, just try to pay off your credit card balance in full a few times a month so that you never have to carry a balance month to month, you never miss a minimum payment, and you never have to pay interest. But if you do happen to miss a minimum payment, here's what you can do. As long as you remember that you forgot to make your minimum payment within 30 days after it was actually due, just go ahead and pay it off because likely the credit card issuer will not have reported that to the credit bureaus by that point, so it won't negatively affect your credit score. You'll still likely be hit with a late fee, but if you have a good long-term relationship with your credit card issuer, if you just call them up and ask nicely, they may waive it for you. But if you missed your payment by more than 30 days, there's likely not much that you can do to avoid some of the negative consequences, but go ahead and pay it off anyway because 45 days overdue is better than 90 days overdue, and so on. And the seventh and final credit card mistake that I see people make the most is not using credit cards at all. When I was in high school and I had this debit card that I used at the time, I remember thinking to myself, why would anybody use a credit card? Because it's just this whole extra step to pay with a credit card and then remember to pay it off. And on top of that, credit cards were just being portrayed very negatively because supposedly it's just going to lead you into all this bad debt. I wanted to just make a purchase and then be done with it, so a debit card or cash seemed like the right solution. But I didn't realize all the great benefits of credit cards and why they're so important and something that I'm so passionate about today. First, they help with security. If you have cash in your wallet and it gets stolen or misplaced, you're probably out of luck. And if somebody steals your debit card and manages to make a purchase with it, that money in your checking account is going to disappear almost instantly. You're gonna have to go ahead and file a dispute with your bank. It's gonna take a long time, and really that money is going to take a while before it ends up back in your account. But with a credit card, you're not going to be held liable for a fraudulent transaction. The credit card company is just the third party in this situation, so you call them up, dispute the transaction, and you don't actually have to pay them. And on top of that, you're going to be earning cash back, reward points for travel, and many other benefits that debit cards just can't provide. In fact, over the years, I've accumulated hundreds of thousands of reward points that I've used for travel when booking things like hotels and flights, and this is all from just spending with my normal spending habits, but I use a credit card instead of a debit card or cash. You're also going to be building your credit score in the process, which, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, is really good because it's going to give you access to lower interest rates for things like mortgages and auto loans and any other things that you might need in the future. If you want to learn more about some of the credit cards that I use for travel and earning cash back, then feel free to check out some of the videos that I'm going to put on the screen right now, and consider subscribing to my channel for more personal finance and credit card related content. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some good use out of it, and I hope that you have a great day.